Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. The webinar for today is going to start just in a couple of minutes. We've got lots of people registered. I'm just going to give everyone a chance to log on and we'll start very, very soon. Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us. We have a load of people registered today. They're still joining as I speak, so welcome. Today, we are going to go through a charity finance webinar from us here at iplicit, and we have our special guest speaker, Mr. Mark Salway. Here he is. Hi, Mark. I can just navigate through my slides. So again, thank you very much for joining us. The topic for today, in the next 45 minutes, we'll go through some introductions from Mark and myself. We'll go through a bit of webinar housekeeping. We might ask you a question or two to get a bit of interaction going as well. So my name's Guy. I'm part of the solutions team here at iplicit. This is very sad. I prepared my first set of charity accounts 35 years ago. So I've know a little bit about this, hopefully, and I'll try and share some of that with you. It was for the campaign for the protection of rural England, Leicestershire or Loughborough branch, might have been Charnwood branch back then. So that's me, and I'm honoured and very privileged to be joined by the charity non-profit financial guru, this Mr. Sir Mark Salway. Mark, good morning. You're just on mute at the moment.
Let me just unmute myself. Thank you for that intro.
That's normally me who does that.
28 years ago, I did my first set of charity accounts, so you've beaten me. And I did that for ActionAid and also for the Physically Handicapped and Able-Bodied Society.
Oh, wow.
So those were the two charities I first worked on. But no, it's just a pleasure, Guy. It's a pleasure to be part of this.
Yeah, I really appreciate you joining us. So onwards and upwards, we've got a lot to cram into today. So firstly, I'm going to hand over to Mark to begin with, and Mark's going to cover off what the challenges that non-profits are facing now. Then Mark's going to hand over to me. I'm going to explain a bit more about a case study from one of our clients, and we'll talk about how and where a modern finance system could help. So it's not necessarily everyone needs one, but we'll cover off how and why we think iplicit can help and where we've been successful in doing that. And then we're going to finish off today's session with a Q&A session. So I'll talk about that in a second. A bit of help and information during the webinar. You'll also find in the handout section of GoToWebinar in the panel on your left or right hand side or wherever you've positioned that, there's a series of handouts, case studies, guides, hints and tips we've collated and put together. You're free to download those. They can also be found on our website. As we go through, if you do have questions, feel free to use the questions area or the chat area of GoToWebinar. We'll go through a Q&A session, so ask any questions about any of the topics or anything else as well. As we go through, we'll do our best to answer them at the session and fit in as many as we can. And chat, come and say hi. We want a bit of interaction to this session as well, so you're not just listening to us monologue to you. So I thought, as we're not doing this in person, so I can't comment on how nice your car park is or what sort of the excellentness of your stairs or lifts. I thought I'd like to know what the weather's like where you are, because we're all over the place at the moment. In Brackley, in Northamptonshire, where I am now, quite dull and overcast. So if you're in the chat window, we'd just like to know what's the weather like. So I'm going to cover that off as we go through.
So Guy, in the last couple of sessions, I've had people from Kenya and people from the US. So let's see if we can get somebody from outside the country as well.
That would be awesome, actually, because we have got a load of people in today. So I'm going to cover that off in a second. I'm going to hand over to Mark now, and then I'll find out where people are.
So anybody got anything they want to put into the chat? Feel free as we go through, because there's bound to be questions. It just makes it far more interactive. So come and say hi. Anybody going to write in the chat? Anybody feel brave enough? Oh, Cloudy and Brackley. I was going to say thank you so much. Oh, that's you. Okay. Right. Okay. Let's get into the content then, Guy, if we can.
Okay. Yeah. And just as a fun to finish off, we are recording the session, and we'll be sending everyone an email link out following the session as well. So if you need to re-record it or share with a colleague, you'll be able to do that as well. Right, Mark, over to you.
Yep. So I've worked as a charity consultant for, I don't know, 12, 13 years, always helping charities in their finance functions or strategic finance. And at the same time, I've worked as a finance director, I've worked as a head of finance, I've actually had my hands right in the numbers, and I've implemented, I don't know, probably 5 or 6 different systems. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk openly about some of the things that have gone well, some of the things that haven't gone so well. And I've got scars on my back to show this. I mean, we went live, Guy, across 86 different countries, $1 billion organization, and we did it all big bang on one day. It was incredible. Yeah, I wouldn't recommend it again, but I mean, we can talk about that if we want to. So what I thought I'd do, is bring to life a little bit about where the sector is at the moment. Yeah, and so I've got 3 bullet points, as you can see across the top. The first thing that we're seeing is just complexity has really increased. Complexity in terms of cost of living, complexity in terms of what's going on with Ukraine, complexity in terms of post-COVID. People are asking questions of the organization and having to really rethink things. But that's playing through, for example, into local authorities. They're having to make really hard money decisions, and we're having to respond to that. Money is moving much more from long-term to short-term. Cash is moving to arrears rather than getting that in advance. This complexity that we're all having to deal with as finance people means that we really do need good tools. So when people come to see me in my consulting work, they typically say, look, I've got one of 2 problems. Either I'm trying to survive, in other words, I need money to be able to make my organization sustainable for the future, or I'm actually fine on the other hand, and what I'd actually need to do is reimagine. In other words, rethink the way that I do things, because I've got a sustainable business model at the moment, but it's not going to be for the future, or it's not good enough for the beneficiaries. We're not using our assets and sweating them enough. So organizations are starting to reflect on survival, reimagination, the complexity, and what do you need for that is good tools to be able to take the right decisions and really get into this value for money agenda. Yeah, you need good management information. And what I'm going to talk about as well is you need to align your finances and your activities. It's not enough to have a line saying staff, equipment, costs, travel. In other words, those cost lines. Really looking at what you do and how you do it. So, for example, it might be provision of water services or humanitarian aid or workshops or whatever you actually do, not the cost lines. It's the activities we need to get into. Yeah. So good in management information to really be able to question, our numbers. And if you wouldn't mind going to the next slide, Guy. It's interesting then when you ask yourself the question, well, what do we need? Yeah, in terms of a system to be able to help us, to be able to get better, to be able to become more efficient. The first thing is, what data do you need? What are the decisions you need to take? Well, typically it's going to be things like cash, income and expenditure, your forecast for the future. And the little red bell that always goes off in my mind is when people say, look, we just need to do the year-end accounts. That's a byproduct of what you do. It's not management information. Management information enables you to run your businesses and to take management decisions. But the year-end accounts are just something you have to do. It doesn't really, it's not the be all and end all of like the finance function. And some people get worried at that, yeah, you've got to have a good enough system really to press the button and get most of that information out. You can't do it all from a system, but most of it, and then you can get on with the day job. You can get on with giving the business and operations business some good insight into how the finances are playing out and operationally how you're doing. So what is good management reporting? Remember, we're not talking about statutory reporting. We've just said that that's the reports and accounts. We're going to do that once a year. We're talking about management reporting and how we report every single month. Yeah, it's got to be timely. In the commercial sector, they're saying 5 days to close. That means you've got to get good enough information into the system. It's got to be forward-looking. We need some forecasts. We need some reforecasts. It's got to be useful with some graphs. Guy, you laughed at that when I said that, yeah. But without some graphs, you know, it's just numbers. I mean, some people are number blind like myself. I like pictures. I like to see trends. But the big thing for me is understanding the drivers. So if, for example, it's the number of children you help with education that drives the numbers, let's get that underneath the numbers so you can actually really see what's driving those numbers. And I find that legacy systems, in other words, old finance systems, are inflexible and inefficient, quite often paper-based. Well, with COVID, that's really struggled because you're not distributed, you can't do things electronically. You can't slice and dice the data and get the information easily out. And it doesn't integrate into other systems. And so you're always having to manually retype things. And that's just not helpful from an efficiency point of view. So, you know, what will a new set of tools give you? Well, it's not a panacea, of course. You know, it's a mix of people, process, and technology. We're going to come back to that. But it will give you a good head start on all of these things underneath. So what is the key problem that I'm seeing in the sector at the moment? It's on the next slide. Here it is. It's quite simple, and you can see, you know, my glamorous assistant has actually like sort of just brought in the arrows. What you're looking at here is my finances actually aligned against the activities you do. So you can see across the top here, service 1, service 2, service 3, membership, workshops. Those are the activities that you're engaged in. And you can see the income at the top, and then underneath it, we've got staff costs, we've got non-staff costs, we've got indirect, which are our overhead costs, and support costs that go alongside that. So you can see the blue and the yellow are articulating things that directly link to the activity. So you can see service number 1, 100,000. You've got some direct staff costs, 42,000, non-staff costs, 12,000. You take off your yellow box, you come to 12,900. Most organizations make the mistake that they think that that's good enough. But look over on the far right-hand side, you've got an orange box, which is all the overheads. They're not apportioned across the different services you have, so you can't really see the true cost. It's not transparent in terms of the true cost. Now, this is a real example of a small charity that then said, look, we're making surplus in terms of each of our individual activities. Can you see that? Yeah, 12,000, 19,000. But we're still making a loss overall, and it was because they hadn't apportioned this 51,000 across each of these individual lines. Now, a good system, a good finance system will do this automatically for you once you've set it up. But even thinking about the methodology, people haven't thought in that way before. So let's have a look at spreading it across the different columns then. There you go. So allocating the overheads means that service number 1 actually wasn't a surplus after all. Yeah, it made a contribution. In other words, it made a little bit of money before overheads, but allocate the overheads to that. See in column number 1, service 1, it's making a loss. Service 2 was only breaking even, but the real problem they had was the workshops, the conferences and training. And so having reallocated the numbers and being able to see against your activities, they suddenly went, you know what, we've really got to change service 1, bring it together with service 2, think about our reimagination for the future. And we're really going to have to think about the workshops again in a profoundly different way and how we do that. And they drove down the loss they had on workshops. They brought service 1 and service 2 together, as I say. They created something new around that for the future, put some investment into that, and they had a very sustainable business model going forward. So there you go. It's the biggest problem I see in the sector at the moment is we don't align the finances with what we're actually doing, in other words, the activities. So having just had a little conversation about that. Let's look at the finance model a little bit more. And to bring about change, I mean, next slide if you could, Guy, please. To bring about change, you need three things, really. And when I was working back at KPMG, I did what, about 18 years, or in total I've done about 18 years of finance function reviews. In other words, getting into the nitty-gritty. And KPMG always used to talk about this methodology where you're going to talk about the people, the processes, the technology, and then the final thing I'd say is the management information, what you get out. But they didn't talk about that. They used to talk about people, process, technology. So the people, you've got to get the right skills in the right place to meet what you actually need. The processes have to be efficient. Don't duplicate into things, and where you can integrate into other systems, let the systems talk to each other. Yeah. Processes, remove non-value-added activities where you've got multiple sign-offs and you don't really know who's responsible and accountable, but everybody signs it off. Stop it. Yeah. Go back and work out how you get that to be really efficient. And software will help you with that, because you'll be able to, for example, put in different layers of authorization, and the software will do that for you. Automated bank recs, in other words, getting your bank reconciliation so that you can do that in an automated way, getting that better. That's a process as well as a technology thing. And then the final part of that is technology. So technology, so that you're able to have better tools to report, better tools to do the transaction processing, better tools to help you. Now, why I'm working or starting to work with iplicit is that I've personally done a lot of bad implementations. I want us to be better at implementations. I want us to be better at this, yeah. But it's not enough just to do the tech alone. You've got to do the change bit and the people, but you've got to do the process bit, and you've got to get your brown paper out and map out all your processes and make it more streamlined. And then you've got your technology behind that. Get all of those three together, and it's like gold dust. You can really move your finance function forward. So that's my kind of update on the sector. In summary, it's getting more complex. You need better tools to do scenarios. You need better tools to actually sort of get the management information out. You need to work out what decisions you need to make though. How do you change people, process, technology? But the key thing the sector's getting wrong at the moment is you're not aligning your finances against your activities. So you can't really see the surplus or deficit you're properly creating in each of those. Hope that's been helpful. I'm gonna pass back to Guy.
Thank you. That was really good. That was really insightful, and that's a common theme I come across when we're speaking to different customers and prospective customers as well. Those really sort of resonate with the questions and the areas that they want to improve on. So, and talking of which, I'm just going to run through a little case study for one of our customers, Health Poverty Action. HPA, they are they're an international NGO. They work with health workers, activities in communities, in improving healthcare and services and aligning that with tackling poverty. So they do an awesome job. They sort of focus on the whole solution. They've got a really great attitude, really brilliant work that they're doing around the world. But to do all of that, they've got over 300 staff, 14 countries. Added to that, multiple companies, foreign exchange rates and variances and different territories, and a ton, literally tons of projects that are international by nature as well, and a myriad, bless them, of international and institutional donors as well. And they wanted a reason for change. They were primarily using QuickBooks around in each office, which was an old version of QuickBooks as well. But there was a couple of Sun systems thrown in there as well. Sandra, they identified that we don't have a single view of the finances across the organisation. So I suppose even more important than those things that Mark highlighted, they just didn't have that single central view. So they identified that, but at the same time, so part of the processes around that, they would also recognise that it was going to be a huge cultural change for the entire organisation. So they had to really bear that in mind, think about how, when they did implement a new finance system, whichever finance system they went, and they took over 12 months. They were very diligent, looked at the whole market, but they uncovered things like they were taking 6 weeks at year end. They were taking it was up to 3 weeks to produce like donor reports and things like that. And they obviously understood that wasn't efficient in any way, shape or form, and it's not giving them the information they needed to make those business decisions. So luckily for us, they decided to implement iplicit. And the future now is that from Sandra, who's the head of finance and administration, one of the project leaders for the entire project, she said the standout feature for her is to be able to have that full visibility about financial management in all countries in real time at a touch of a button, and also being able to monitor budgets and actuals, and also handle the authorizations and approval processes as well. So that gives them as they grow as an organization as well, that those other controls that they need to establish and improve those internal controls that they recognized as well. So that's HPA. And there is a case study. There's a link on the website, and I think in the handouts as well, we've put a copy of the case study as well. So it's a really good read if you get a chance to download that. I'll have a look at that. We're going to do a little bit more interaction. So if there's in the questions area, we thought we'd ask the audience a question. So it's not, it wants to be a millionaire type question, but we'd like to know or get your feedback in terms of what you feel are your key issues and what you'd like to address or what you're looking at addressing, either in the short, long, or medium term. And we'll have a chat about that as we go through. And so in the chat window, or sorry, questions area of GoToWebinar, if you'd like to type that in for us, any of those questions, if you feel the need to, and we'll cover off and talk about those. So I've got some reporting. It's a common one. Efficiencies. Oh, someone mentioned VAT.
Yeah. Well, I've implemented 3 systems, that we tried to actually do automated VAT, and it hasn't really, worked, Guy. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I've put iplicit through its test in terms of VAT accounting. It works. It's one of those things I was really, really impressed with, and also really excited to see, because you should be able to do VAT online. And of course, the VAT recognition plays straight into things like cost recovery and actually like sort of, your business model and how you actually recover costs. It's exactly the same. It's exactly the same conversation,
Yeah, and be able to get that in real time. Yeah, we've got quite a few partial VAT. A lot of it donor reporting as well. That's a really common. I think that's coming up more and more. I've noticed over the past few years, the fact that donors are getting more, not demanding, but they want more specific, more real-time information, that type of thing. That's another really common area for me.
So let's just stop on that for 1 second as well, Guy. In that donor reporting is really hard, because what you've got is you've got your ledgers here and the way that you account for things here, and you've got a donor, if you like, sort of report, and you have to account for it in these different ways, and you have to be able to align your system with their donor reporting. Now, to get that right is really quite difficult, because sometimes the costs don't align on a one-to-one basis. Yeah. But I mean, at the same time, a computer can really, or a good software system that can slice and dice the data properly, like iplicit, you can get so far down the road. You only need some very minimal intervention then. But it's this problem. How do you match them across? It's, systems are getting much better at it, and I know iplicit has that functionality.
Yeah, I feel lots of spreadsheets might be involved in making those sort of decisions as well. That sort of information.
Oh, it's not perfect, but it's a good way down the road.
No, well, I'll make sure I cover that off as well.
Sure.
As we go through, remind me if I forget. Reporting to non-finance managers, so non-finance users being able to access information. Again, that's one of those that is a more, whether it's non-finance users, even volunteers and things like that these days. More and more people wanting, even volunteers doing expenses and things like that. That's a good one as well. So yeah, access to information. Thinking outside of the finance team as well. That's what Sandra discovered as well.
And I mean, people being able to download the information themselves and interrogate that because they're either interested or it's part of their month-end control. Secondly, having something really good where you can capture expenses on your iPhone, or your handheld mobile device. I mean, these are simple things you can do to really improve your finance functions.
Yeah, I think that being able to share the information across the organisation rather than being locked up in a finance system, I think that's probably one of the most important things that should come across any sort of transformation. That should be a big priority. Right, anyway, so that we're waffling on about stuff, aren't we? People want, I don't know if people want to see software. We'll find out in the next 15 minutes. Okay, let's go and take a look. So I'm going to do my best to give you a very brief introduction to iplicit. I'm going to cover off a lot of areas, and feel free, again, ask questions as we go through, and we'll cover those off in the Q&A. But again, this is going to be a whistle-stop tour, but just to give you a flavour of what modern finance systems can do. So not specifically iplicit, obviously it's an iplicit webinar, so we're going to talk about iplicit, but just to give you an idea of what technology can give. First is accessibility. So we've got access to iplicit from a browser. So that's the only thing I need. Nothing to install on a computer. I could use it from a Chromebook. I could use it. All I need is a Wi-Fi connection or an internet connection. Don't need to be in the office. Can use it from home, use it from abroad, all that type of good, useful information. But something that should be borne in mind is that security is important for any sort of organisation these days, and we hear it every day about different organisations being hacked and things like that. So we take security incredibly seriously. So we have the system itself is hosted on Microsoft Azure, which is resilient. We do real-time backups. We do disaster recovery planning. All of that sort of stuff was handled by, or should be handled by, the supplier. And also to be able to do things like multi-factor authentication, to be able to do things like single sign-on. All that sort of parameters is something you should be looking out for as well as strong and secure reporting. Once a user's logged in to the system, they should be able to do some of that self-service bits that Mark was talking about. So they should be able to be presented with, look, Mark, it's a chart. They should be presented with information from the finance system that's relevant to that user. It knows who I am because I've logged in securely, and then it can present Guy with the bits of data that's important to him or her, and to be able to interact with that as well. So to be able to put information into PDF files, download it to Excel if I needed to drill into that data. It's all important so I can make business decisions in real time that affect my part of the organisation, or if I'm a trustee or if I'm a member of the board, I can see a holistic view across as we're going across the entire organisation.
Just before you leave that,
on,
what's the graph or the chart that everybody loves the most?
I think a lot of them are either actuals versus budgets is obviously really popular because everybody wants to see those. And I think the majority is the income side thing. So how much
I was going to say,
have you got left in that pot? How much is in the pot? How much is coming into the pot?
I was going to say a pie chart, so I was looking for a pie chart on here. Now, I agree. It's your actual
yeah. I'll show you some pie charts later, I promise. But I might be a project manager, so I might be part. And the way that we can use a modern finance system is not just to capture invoices. I think that's something I'm really passionate about, is to be able to we need to be able to manage that whole procurement process. So from a budgeting and forecasting point of view, but also to trap requisitions and orders and projects, so that the team has understandings of commitments against those projects, so nothing comes as a surprise to people. I will need to be able to see a committed TB and put it in and put it into words and terminology that a non-finance person can understand. So again, from that self-service point of view, I can see the orders that I've signed off. I can go through approval processes and make sure that I realise and recognise that information against my particular project. Against the life of that project, to be able to put milestones against projects, to be able to work out what resources we need against those projects, having all that information to hand easily without the finance team having to spend a couple of days collating all that information, or even worse, I'm ending up spending my time filling in my own spreadsheets and keeping that sort of information. So that duplication of information, duplication of effort, all should be taken away. And how we've done that with iplicit, we've built what we call a single environment, and that single environment allows me to trap all of your legal entities in one system. So I don't need to log on to here, log off here, log in there. Everything is in one place. Having everything in one place and the legal entities that I've got means that we can do things like intercompany transactions. So again, transfers, staff working across countries, or staff working across companies or projects. Most non-profit organisations that I speak to that at least have a trading arm and then the charity itself. So even that, to be able to do intercompany transactions, transfers, manage loan accounts, that type of thing in one place means I get that real-time information. And the way that we've designed iplicit is we have what we call we've built a whole automation center so that I can create a bank transfer in company A automatically updates the bank account in company B. I could pay a set of suppliers out of one company, we'll do all the intercompany loan transfers and intercompany accounts and manage the purchase ledger accounts on behalf of those other companies. It also means you've got things like integrated aged creditors. You can see creditors across the organization. You don't need to set up a supplier 3 times or 5 times or 20 times. Having that access to information, together with the ability to drill into information, we found from a self-service point of view, if I'm looking at something, I need to be able to find that information nice and easily. So the fact that we've got the ability to drill down into the transactions that relate to an expense, we watermark things, which is one of my favorite things on this incredibly sophisticated and innovative finance system that we've created. And my favorite bit is the fact that we watermark things. So again, from an end user's point of view, I can see, oh, this has been paid, it's waiting to be authorized. I've got that information to hand. I can get it within a couple of clicks of a mouse. But against all of your companies, you'll need to know from a reporting point of view, how are we doing? From an organizational point of view, we might have management type profit and loss accounts, balance sheets, TBs, that type of thing. But as Mark says, the important thing is we'll have different stakeholders. We'll need to report on compliance from a compliance point of view and also from a donor point of view. We might need to report on this information in other languages, that type of thing. So the way that we manage that with iplicit is that we have our chart of accounts packs, which allow us to take your nominal ledger. When I say we, it means you really, but then I can shape and sort that in different ways, shapes and forms. So I want to see a SORP version of that chart of accounts. I want to see our French version of that chart of accounts. I have a specific donor or set of donors who need to see that information, but in a particular way to suit their reporting purposes. I can do all of that without me having to resort to stick this into an Excel spreadsheet, do a load of pivoting and formatting, and then produce it that way, because that's losing the inherent real-time information that you should be getting the benefit of if you're using a cloud finance system. And then the ability to slice and dice that data. Yeah, sorry, Mark.
Yeah, can you just go back to the SORP view? Because I mean, it's
Sure.
We're working on this, to get the perfect SORP view, if you like, for the future. But I was saying that actually you should be able to get most of the information to SORP out at the click of a button. Here we go. Yeah, so you can see across each of the individual months. It's just a matter of creating your chart of accounts, or if you like, your template in a SORP-based way, identifying which ones of your general ledger codes go to which ones of these codes, and then let the system do the work. Yeah, and it might not be perfect, as I say, but it gets you a lot of the way there for the statutory account.
Exactly, but it's that being able to pivot the data is the one thing that we've really worked hard on, and really how we designed iplicit from the start, so that then I can see that information on an organizational point of view, but I can also see that information from a consolidated point of view. I can see that information across the entities we've got within the group. I could see it against the different cost centers. We might have, HR and marketing that run across all the entities that we've got. I can see all of that information in one view, and using our pivots, I'm really going into detail now, but you can then drag and drop how you'd like that data to be pivoted. So I don't think we came up with the idea of a pivot table. I think that was a bloke at Microsoft called Dave. But anyway, we've kind of borrowed Dave's ideas and tried to build that into the finance system. So I don't need to resort to put it into Excel. But then especially for a non-profit organization, what I'd also need to be able to do, one of the key things, again, SORP related, just bear with me while I've just timed out because it's a security check. So we need to be able to manage your funds. So the way that we've designed iplicit is we have unlimited analysis fields. So you can slice and dice that data up and trap that data at any point, whether it's project, whether it's campaign, activity. But also one of the most important things is funds. So I can set up all of our different fund types. I can set up all of our different funds. As many of these as we want. They can go into hierarchies of different sectors and funds, and I can trap that information at source, which then gives me the ability to take my TB and then look at my TB by the different funds that I've got. So again, it helps me with my SORP reporting, but also helps me from a control point of view, make sure that this fund expenditures only comes out of that fund pot. Same goes with distributing that income as well. And for those of you who do have lots of projects, if I go into this one, to be able to manage your projects, use that same slicing and dicing. So in this case, I've got countries and projects and activities, but to have that live within the system means that it should free up the finance team to spend time on some real good value-added stuff. The budgeting and forecasting that we've got across the organisation, the fact that we've got the ability to do unlimited budgets and forecasts. We can forecast at project level. It can roll up to the GL. It can be independent to that particular area. My end users, my project managers, can get real-time access to their projects without having to wait for information to be pushed out of the finance system. They could get the ability, if I found some, we've got some, that's why. With the ability then to drill into those expense claims. Mark mentioned expenses, and we've also hopefully thought of that as well. So we can do expenses through the system itself. We can also, I'm just checking time. We can also, if I can drag this across. There you go. If everyone can see that. We've also got mobile apps as well, so that again that connectivity. Oh, just timed out again. I can't put a password in while everyone's watching. If everyone just looks away for a second, and I'll put my password. I'll show you the mobile app later in the Q&A session. Type your password in. Other things that I needed to show you were around purchasing and procurement. So the ability to, again, this is an area that I think is definitely underloved within most organisations I'm speaking to. We need to manage that procurement process nice and easily. We need people to be able to simply raise requisitions, orders, and for that requisitions and orders to be, I'm just going to copy this one. When those requisitions and orders get raised, we're trapping that information against the narrative, the analysis, the dimensions that we need, the funds, the projects, getting all that information so then that will align with my budgets and that type of thing. But most importantly, that then goes through some sort of authorization process as well. So we've built within iplicit the ability to put workflows around anything in the system. Procurement's obviously an obvious one, expenses is another, timesheets might be something else, budget approvals, bank reconciliations, journals, VAT returns. And talking of VAT returns, the ability to be able to have live updates of your VAT returns, but also for those VAT returns to be able to span multiple entities for anyone using group VAT returns, and for anyone using partial VAT, for us to also be able to, oops, if I go into the right bit, for us to be able to handle your group accounting, but also the partial VAT recognition as well. So I can set up my partial VAT rates. I can have iplicit do that. So again, it's freeing up some of the finance team, allowing us to produce that information, but also from a department head, a budget holder's point of view, they know the costs to take account into those partial VAT recognitions as well. And then finally, I'll just finish this off with automations. So we've got automations across the system. So automate your month-end accruals, automate your deferred income calculations, automate your disbursements, eliminations. Because iplicit's putting those intercompany transactions in, I can switch eliminations off with a click of a button. To be able to manage foreign exchange gains and losses, because we're a multi-company system, a multi-currency system, and having all that information with data feeds coming in from currency changes and things like that, and automatic revaluations, all helps to speed up things from a finance team's point of view. So instead of taking 3 weeks to produce donor reports, I can get those reports out in real time, out to those people, or with minimum amounts of updates. I'm running out of time. I would love to show you, very briefly explain, because Mark showed this earlier on. We've also got iplicit live in Excel. What that means is that we can build pixel perfect spreadsheets with iplicit information. And because we did think that we'd be able to get away from Excel, but instead we decided to work with that process. Oh, I need to refresh my login. I'll come back and show you that one. What I was going to show you is we've got live Excel reporting. Have I got one I can show you? No. So I knew something could go wrong in this. That's two. We've got live Excel reporting with the Excel plugin. All right, I'm running out of time, and we now need to head back to PowerPoint and ask any questions, because I'm really conscious we've got to finish on time. Really important.
So Guy, just before you do that, I think, you know, for the audience, just to say, I mean, what Guy showed you there is multi-entity, multi-currency, dashboard enabled, where you're able to get different reporting formats and templates out, fully enabled in Excel. And then the final thing I'd say, Guy, which you haven't obviously had a chance to demonstrate, is you can really link it to other systems. So linking it and integrating it into you know, other systems, maybe your fundraising
systems, fundraising,
maybe your CRM, whatever that is really powerful, because then you don't actually have to retype everything. And that's what I typically see as a big issue. Yeah,
that comes up with every prospective customer I speak to, is they'll have all the systems, whether it's donor management systems or CRM systems or just giving or whatever it will be. We need to stop rekeying information, and we can take data feeds into our APIs and things like that as well. So that takes a lot of pressure off the finance team in that, and it helps with reconciliations obviously as well, and speeds things up.
There's 3 minutes left. Any questions?
Questions. I'm just going to go through the questions window. Bear with me. Hang on a second.
So while you're looking, I'll tell you the thing that I've found the most useful out of everything that I've seen from iplicit so far is the slice and dice ability. You know, the thing for me is I want to see data per project, so that I can actually like sort of give a different template onto the you know, the data and report from that. It's really quite powerful in that way, and good, as you know, Guy said, good systems, whichever you choose, should be able to do that.
Yeah, they should. We have a load of questions. So one question was from Claire, is can we have new organisations based in Africa? Yes, we can. So we can have different authorities, different charts of accounts, those different account packs that we looked at earlier on. We can use those to produce the compliance point of view, from a compliance point of view, but also from a tax authority point of view as well for different entities. Can it handle VAT reverse charge calculations for partial VAT recovery organisations? Yes, we can. Yeah, so that's all part of the VAT. The VAT setup with iplicit, so we multi-jurisdictional, reverse charges, partial VAT is all part of that. Real-time reporting for restricted funds would be useful as well. Yeah, Adam, we can do real-time reporting. So all of the reporting in iplicit is live, but also because I'm trapping information, so those commitments, those, whether it's journals or payment runs or anything like that, and we can report on that information in real time. So again, I can see where we are actually, what's been posted to the GL, but I can also see what's coming up as well, and then bring in those budgets and forecasting. What else have we got? Someone says you seem to time out frequently. Presume that the user can set the parameters. Yeah, there's an environment setting, but it is a security feature, that timeout feature. So because I've left it for more than 5 minutes or 10 minutes, then we don't want people to log in. So again, that is by design. not user incompetence or anything like that. Are there different types of licensing for finance and non-finance users? Yes, they are. Yeah, we have, there's core finance users, but also we've got the sort of distribution sort of transactional model, so you can give it to as many people in the organisation and not be charged on a per user basis as well. That seems really popular for our non-profit organisations. Sarah has asked, reporting, this is one for you, Mark, I think. So reporting at lots of different levels without lots of manual, it's definitely something you get involved in, Mark. Reporting at lots of different levels without lots of manual work to produce reports and consolidations. That was something really important to Sarah, which again is part of that, having all of your finance systems in one, what we call environment, so within that one iplicit thing. And I'm sad to say, because I could go on for ages, we've got loads more questions, and we'll do our best to answer some of these after the session, but it is 11:45, so we're going to finish on time.
Question from me, Guy, because I know the answer.
Go on.
Can you do timesheets and have like sort of timesheets in the system as well? Because a lot of other systems can't handle timesheets well. What about timesheets?
Yeah, so you can do timesheets in the app along with your requisitions and expenses and multi-currency things. So we can do timesheets, they can have different time rates, and we can post timesheets to the GL. They can go to the projects as well, but I don't need to necessarily allocate that time out to the GL as well. So I can have that notional charge as well. So if you don't distribute wages and salaries out by timesheet levels, we've got some sort of standard costing models we can put in there as well. So yeah, we do timesheets is the simple answer to your question, Mark, but I extrapolated that a little bit. So, and just to finish, because we're nearly overrunning, next steps, if you do, have you found anything that we've talked about today from Mark or myself, you can go to iplicit.com. There is calendar links to book meetings and demonstrations if you want to see the software in a more lengthy period of time and ask some questions and get some real-time interaction. You can request a callback. You can go to iplicit.com. We have lots of resources on iplicit.com, from everything from case studies to webinars to videos, and we've been working with a chap called Salway, who has developed a toolkit for non-profit organisations. Look out for that on the website. That will come in early next month. And you can also speak to our non-profit guru and expert. We have our very own guru and expert, Paul Sparks. Paul's our commercial director, but he's got lots of experience in the non-profit sector, and he'd be really happy to speak to you. Apart from that, I would just like to thank Mark very much for joining us today. I hope you found some useful bits and pieces out of this session. Thank you, Mark. And thank you all for your time and attention. Hope you found that useful. Keep checking out on iplicit.com. We do lots of webinars all the time, so you might find some more that you find interesting. Apart from that, thank you all very much. I hope you have a great day, and we'll see you on the next one. Bye.